welcome to the next edition of Restoration TV Restoration. That's who we are. We're a part of Kingdom First Television Network. I'm Dr. Don Hughes. I'm your host, and my spiritual daughter in the Lord, Geneva Hollis. She is our co-host, and we are starting, Geneva, today, chapter 8 of the 12 chapters in my new book. Well, the one we're teaching from, The Kingdom of Heaven is Like. We're going to get in depth in this. This is one of my favorite parables in the book, only because I think, if we're all honest, this one has probably touched us at some time in our life more than one time. Would you agree? I mean,
absolutely.
So I'm going to read this first little paragraph on chapter 8 called The King's Servants, and then I'm going to have Geneva read that passage of scripture, and we'll begin to break that down over the next few programs. This kingdom parable, is one of the most important ever ministered by the Lord. This kingdom parable can never be overemphasized. It is the principle that, if lived by, will manifest a long, productive, and fruitful life. In a nutshell, this parable principle deals with the concept of forgiveness, or the lack thereof. Jesus begins to explain this parable in Matthew chapter 18. The whole parable, which we'll get to over the next few programs, is verses 23 through 35. But he does it in response, Geneva, to a question presented by Peter a couple verses earlier. And Peter asked this question in Matthew 18, 21 and 22. Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Jesus said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. I think this is probably a little humorous, Geneva, and I'm going to ask you your thought before I have you begin to read the parable. You know, Peter was like not any of the other disciples. The guy thought a lot. Yes, he made mistakes, but he also got the revelation of the Christ. We can't throw that out. That was amazing. He was the first one that ever even used that word or got that revelation. But kind of knowing Peter from reading about him all these years and studying his life, I think when he heard Jesus talk, I have a feeling, Geneva, here's what he probably did. Okay, wait a minute. Wow, that's a strong statement. Okay, how can I impress the Lord? So I'm going to go ask him. Here's what I believe he was doing, Geneva. I believe he was letting the Lord know what his point of no return was. I think he was basically saying, okay, I'm going to let the Lord know he's going to be so impressed with me that I'm willing to forgive somebody 7 times, the same person, for doing the same thing. And he goes and he tries to impress the Lord. He said, Lord, how about 7? What do you think of that? And I think Jesus just kind of probably shook his head and kicked his dirt in the ground a little bit in his foot and said, well, Peter, let me help you. No, not 7. 70 times 7. Jesus just knocked it out of the ballpark. Jesus just messed up every frame of thought that Peter had put in his mind to ask him that question. What's your thoughts on that before I have you read where we're going to go?
In the Southern vernacular, Jesus would have said to Peter, bless your heart.
And I've heard many Southern mamas say that very thing. Yes. Probably your mama a time or two, too.
Oh, probably so. Oh, my goodness. I mean, can't you imagine? He's so puffed up thinking that he is being so generous, magnanimous in his ability to forgive someone 7 times. And to have been shot down that quickly, that fiercely. No, you're not even in the ballpark.
No. And what did he do?
Point.
He challenged everything within Peter by that statement.
Yes, had to.
Now let me say this too, because some people, they say they want discipleship until you get it, start doing it. And then when the 7's not going to work, it's 70 times 7 gets put out. That's when you find, well, I think my schedule is probably too busy. I don't think this discipleship, no. Let's just be honest. The reason it's messing you up is because the envelope just got pushed big time in a challenge, which Jesus did challenge Peter here. And here I'm going to have you read it, but watch this. Peter's question, Geneva, actually was preceded by Jesus' instruction in the verses you're going to read, where he was establishing the procedure of how do you deal with a brother who trespasses or sins against you.
Yes.
So Jesus teaches that, and Peter's sitting there listening. He's like, okay. Wow. I got to forgive. Well, how much time? How often do I? Okay, 7 times. That's going to be it. That's it. That's my point of no return. I'm going to so impress the Lord with my answer. All these other disciples are going to be envious of me. No, Jesus knocked that one. No. So look at now. I'm going to have Geneva read Matthew 18 verses 15 through 20, which is the first part of this. And let's break this down. Geneva, go ahead.
Yes. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. And if he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. Verily I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever ye shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And again I say unto you, that if 2 of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, and it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them.
Now, this part is going to set up to where we're going to go in a moment when Jesus taught about forgiveness and the servant. But listen, folks, and I'm going to read this paragraph out of my book, because especially how Geneva just read the story that Jesus was teaching. In these 6 verses, here's what the Lord does. He breaks down the progression of biblically and correctly dealing with a brother that has aught against you. Notice, Geneva, Jesus is teaching about a brother that has aught, not just someone that you casually know. This is a more intimate term than just a friend. It's a covenant type relationship.
Yes.
I can just see the Apostle Peter, this is what I wrote in the book, as intently listening to Jesus expounds this kingdom principle of forgiveness. Any student of God's word knows Peter's reputation for open mouth, insert foot and chew, like we talked about. And listen, I can also relate to that in my own life and ministry over the years. His question presented to Jesus that we read to you in verses 21 and 22 has nothing to do, folks, with some mathematical formula, some celestial arithmetic. That's not what it's talking about. I believe that Peter's question to Jesus was revealing Peter's heart condition, Geneva, his point of no return, the limit he was willing to forgive a brother, and possibly hoping that he might impress the master with the 7 times. Then I wrote this: true forgiveness has everything to do with our conduct and our attitude in and during the process. I believe Peter had calculated already in his mind his level of forgiveness. The most he could allow himself to forgive, as stated above, his point of no return. Jesus' response was not because he had a bigger calculator than Peter. No. He was revealing that his ways, come on somebody, are higher than ours, and his thought process is higher than ours. Read that scripture, Geneva, in Isaiah 55. Read those 2 verses.
Chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. Pardon me. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
Wow. Think about that, folks. Okay, Peter coming up with 7. Those of you that maybe are a little analytical, or let me break it down for you just to consider something that I actually saw and wrote in the book. Okay, Peter said, Lord, how about 7 times? Jesus' answer was no. How about 70 times 7? Well, 70 times 7 is 490. Wow. The best Peter could come up with was 7. Jesus said, how about 490? Now, again, I'm not saying this was some celestial arithmetic. He wasn't being specific. Here's what I believe he was saying, and I wrote this in the book. One of the 4 Gospels, Geneva, when it comes to this story, it said forgiving someone daily 490 times. Ouch. So this is what I wrote. The average person sleeps about 8 hours a day. That leaves 16 hours a day to forgive somebody 490 times in 16 hours. Let me break it down even further. That's literally forgiveness being activated and or released about every 90 seconds. The number 9 in the Bible represents finality and birth. True forgiveness can bring closure to things that need closed and birth something new and fresh. The bottom line, folks, is this. It's not a formula. It's not a mathematical equation. Here's it. Here's what it is. I wrote it in the book. Forgiveness is a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Brother Don, you just don't know what he did to me. You just don't know what she did to me. No, I might not, but guess what? He does. And he set the example by this. You know this, Geneva, but watch. He's hanging on the cross to pay for the sins of humanity that came in because of Adam. And what did Jesus say? Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Folks, it's not a math. It's a way of life. Forgiveness is a principle of life. It is a kingdom principle. And I teach it this way, Geneva, for years. You've heard me. When we don't forgive them, we think we're hurting them. That's where deception comes in. That's not true. That person, I guarantee you, or persons have moved on. They're probably not even thinking about you anymore, but you're consumed with it still, night and day, rehearsing it. Watch this. If I could say it this way, reopening that scab or wound, Geneva, over and over and over again. So they never truly bring closure to that situation. How do you see that, hon?
Absolutely. You have an open wound until you forgive. And just another layer to that, not only are you wounded, but whatever that they've done, the sin they committed against you, you have tied yourself to that sin.
Woo, good word.
You are tied to the act through your unforgiveness.
My God. And I teach it like this. They hurt me. I'm not going to forgive them. But here's what I'm going to do. And we said this. I'm not going to let anybody ever hurt me like that again. So we build these imaginary walls around us, thinking we're protecting ourselves from any future hurt. Nobody's getting in my space, but can I help you, folks? Because I care about you. The wall you've created to keep people out, you're now imprisoned in. And the only images and graphics, that's on the wall is their face that hurts you. So their sin and their issue is constantly before you, not behind you.
Yes.
Not behind you.
Yeah.
So you know what? They've moved on. You're stuck. And now every decision you make in life, and now because of your perception and you thinking that's reality, which is in essence, your perception is not your reality. It's the reality your perception produces. And many times that's not real. But to us, it is. So listen, some of the definitions, Geneva, for the word forgive are to dismiss it, to release it. Wouldn't you agree then if one of the definitions for release means it could be baggage, it could be a weight that we're still carrying that God never intended us to carry, and you've got so much weight on your backpack, you can no longer run the race that's been set before you. Yes. Because you're weighted down with something that God wants to remove. And listen, forgiving them on your part is for you, not them.
Right.
It's for us, not them. It causes us to be free. It causes us to be right with the Lord. It causes us to get our focus back where we can move forward again in the plans and purposes that God has for us.
Yes.
So watch. And this is what I wrote. Another definition is, now, oh my God, Geneva, this was in the dictionary. One of the definitions of the word forgive means to no longer discuss.
Come on.
Folks, I'm just reading you what the dictionary said. And listen, can I just say this? If you're on the other side of it, the only time you would ever bring it up, no names mentioned. I've used this before in some of my teaching. I used it as a testimony to help people where I was, the mistakes I made in not handling it correctly, what happened to me, and how I had to process and get through it to end up doing the right thing. So once you're healed and whole of it, the only reason you would bring it up without names is to use your story as a testimony of something that was supposed to conquer you that you ended up conquering.
Yes.
It means to no longer discuss. Oh, this is good. It means to send it away. Stop keeping it close to you or in your vision. Another one, this is so good. This is another definition. Release from bondage so that one, if free and restored, and then is free or restored, and then the last one, to completely cancel the debt.
Yes.
Woo! I got a question, folks. Did Jesus completely cancel the debt that was against us that came into the world because of Adam? The answer is unequivocally yes, 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 yes. It means to cancel the debt.
Yeah.
Well, Brother Don, how do I forgive him? You do it as unto the Lord. Lord, help me through you forgive them. And you know what? I'm not teaching you something just because I wrote it in a book that I've not had to live. I've had to forgive an ex in a horrific relationship. I've gone to pastors, driven out of my way, Geneva, to go to their house and stand in their door and say, I want you to know, brother, I love you and I forgive you. Or on the other hand, I've done it and said, will you forgive me? That's signs that we truly know we can't do this without the Lord, but we need him to walk through it. What's your thought before we go further?
Absolutely, because the nature of our brain, our mind, is to continually remind us of negative things. That's why forgiveness is never a one and done thing. It has to be redone every day. I think that's part of the what you were talking about in teaching us in the 70 times 7 equals 490. If you could forget it, then you would be able to forgive once and move on. But that's not how our mind works, especially if that person is continuing to be a part of our lives. It is an ongoing effort, something that we have to consciously decide to do.
That's a word. You know, and then the next statement I wrote in the book, the next sentence is this: true forgiveness happens when we forget and hold no grudges.
Yes.
You know, I'm sure you've heard this, Geneva. I've heard it in counseling people. Well, Pastor, I'm going to forgive them, but I'm not going to forget it. Then you didn't forgive them.
Right.
Because if you can't forget it, then it's still in your mind, and it's still a struggle, and it's still something that you're thinking on regular. Instead of what the Bible said, think on things that are good and right and pure and just. And no, you're consumed with they hurt me. I forgive them, but I can't forget it. And then every time you see them, because you haven't let it go, your mind relives that issue because you see their face.
Exactly.
And here comes the weight, the burden, the heaviness, the anger, maybe hatred again, that you have to redeal with. And it's like going in circles in a merry-go-round. You don't ever get off.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to give you a natural illustration in the last few minutes we have on this program, and I'll have Geneva comment. She might have one that'll go with this, and then we'll pray for you today. But listen, I wrote this in the book. While I was writing this book, the Lord showed me a principle on one occasion as I was looking at my own personal credit report, because remember, one of the last definitions is to completely cancel the debt, right? So listen, I found a discrepancy on my credit report that showed a bad debt that had been written off. Now, here's the deal. The bad debt had been written off, but it still showed Geneva on my report, which still affected my credit score and caused people who maybe would loan me money to wait a minute. And so here's what happened. It was written off, but it still remained on my report. Even though it had been written off, seemingly forgiven, it still was a derogatory mark against my credit score, thus affecting my ability to purchase. Can you see, folks, the prophetic implication right here? So I researched, Geneva, the discrepancy. Here's what I found out. It was inaccurate, and I disputed the matter with the credit reporting agency. Actually, it wasn't mine. It was another person named Don Hughes. But because of the name was the same, the computer system didn't recognize the difference of my Social Security number, and it got put on my report. Listen to what I wrote. I found it was inaccurate. I disputed the matter with the credit reporting agency and gave them my proof. 30 days later, I received an updated copy of my report. This time, the bad debt that had been written off, had been removed. My credit score increased. My ability to purchase at better rates was available again. Folks, are you getting the picture? We got about 3 minutes left. You want to add something, maybe your own little thought on this, something with you before we close out today?
Well, that's just so powerful, because that's the example of what he does in and for each one of us.
Come on, sissy.
We're totally renewed. I mean, sometimes I wish some of these people knew me 6-8 years ago. They would be amazed at the people that do know me, that see the transformation that has been done in and through my life. And it's God. It's nothing but God.
Well, I can tell you, Papa, honey, I'm proud of you, and you are not the same person that came into my life several years ago. I've watched the transformation. I've watched your hunger for the kingdom and the things of God. I've seen you pursue it. Even now, everything you're doing, there's a kingdom endeavor behind it. I mean, Folks, if you could see her, if I could put you a before and after picture of her before and her now, if you could have seen when she was on some of the original Zooms, she don't talk. The fact that she's co-hosting a worldwide Kingdom television program with me, you all don't know how incredible that miracle and the healing is in her life, because she would be on those Zooms, and while we were speaking, she'd be like this. I didn't know if she was drawing stick men or what. And one time I said, Geneva, what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm writing stuff I'm getting. I said, okay, wait a minute. Will you just read out loud what you just wrote? And she started reading. She had scribed. Now she's given a voice to it. And those of us ministers and those on the Zoom were going like, what? Wow. Listen to what she's writing. When she began to read what she wrote and she began to hear herself speak what she had written, I began to see the transformation happen in her life. From not even talking to co-hosting with me, being on another woman's program. Now she's helping edit and publish ministers' books around the nation and the world with Pastor Lonzine and all that. And she's in school. She's getting some extra training. She's doing things in her life. She's pursuing the kingdom. Listen. She could be a poster child. I'm going to tell you, so could I, where we've come from and where we're going. You might be totally shocked at this. In high school, when I knew Geneva in English in my junior and senior year, I had to read an oral book report. I got nervous. I sweated. I started getting sick. I was scared to death to speak in front of anybody. Guess how I conquered it? I did the thing I was afraid of. The next semester, I enrolled in drama. So I would have to get up in front of people and push myself through the process. And look at all these years later. Someone would look at me and say, oh, it's so easy. It wasn't. We got about 30 seconds left, hon. Close this out today.
Thank you all for joining us. Please come back with us next week when we will continue in chapter 8 of The Kingdom of Heaven is Like. Please pardon my clip. It keeps my book open. I also ask that you go to www.rhsom.com and check out the Rev House School of Ministry website. You can find all the information about the current classes, the upcoming information. Is it on the website yet, Pops?
Not yet. It's coming, though.
Okay. Before long, they'll have information about the master's program and information about Apostle Don. And also you can find out how to order any and all of his products, books, paraphrases, word studies. All of that information is available on that website. Please go check it out. www.rhsom.com. We love you all, and we'll see you next week.
Next Friday. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Kingdom First TV, your station for kingdom inspiration.